Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is... What day is it? I don't know. I'm going to look it up. It's Tuesday, October 16th, 2018. Of course. What other day could it possibly be? Several you could choose from. This is the one that it is, and this is the one we're going with. October 16th, 2018. Daily Coast Radio is live now. Kagro X, that's me. Hi, I'm David Waldman. Has no good news of any kind today, but if you're good, he might crack open a bag of candy corn. You know where that came from. Bill, hi. How are you? How you doing? Welcome back. Been a while. Everything good? Hope so. And he starts us off with the morning tweet today. We might as well use that since, of course, there is no good news. There's no possible way there would be any today. Don't tune in here for any good news. Not this week. Come back next month. Go away. Come back tomorrow, I guess. Would be the line, except not tomorrow. It is time for some Kagro X in the morning. The mighty OCD reminds us, hot and fresh off the airwaves. Real liberals do it live, baby. And we always like when we're able to entertain you live and on the spot. Mighty OCD. Thanks for your contributions and entertaining us as well. All right. What do you want to catch up on today? It's Tuesday. Greg Dworkin's working. Tomorrow's Wednesday. He'll be back. Joan McCarter will be with him. It's an exciting day. What do we do with today? I don't know. Let's round up the stories that have captured my attention. And please, by all means, feel free to change the direction of the show by sending your ideas and story suggestions, thoughts, responses, etc. here to me. Please do make sure you use that KITM hashtag. That gives it every opportunity to hang up a little bit longer on the desktop here so I can catch it before the Twitter waves sweep it away. Always appreciate getting those contributions and helping us along in the direction of the show. Interesting thing, just as we came on the air here, our resident, I don't know what, our Trump sleuth friend, Wouter Vanderhorst, who's always knee-deep, nay, waist-deep, no, neck-deep in the latest theories about what's going on, and very often finding little nuggets that only make it to breaking news several days later. Just happened to notice that I guess someone's sharing photos online, and presumably that begins with the person herself. Tiffany Trump, the reportedly the least corrupt of the Trumps to date, I guess is now making up for lost time. She wanted everybody to know that she had celebrated her birthday in Washington, D.C. at the Trump Hotel in D.C., and I don't know why that would make a difference to anybody, but she was sharing lots of pictures of herself, I don't know, walking around and posing in her birthday dress, which I guess is a thing that people do. And some of the photos are in public areas, I guess, of the hotel, but at least some of them are taken in one of the suites upstairs. And Wouter was just wondering, having taken a look at the pictures, the framed photos on the wall behind Tiffany in those shots are from inside the room. It's apparently framed photos from the inauguration, which does raise a certain question about whether or not there is any improper line blurring. Of course there's improper line blurring going on at the Trump Hotel, decorating the hotel with the trappings of office in order to, this is probably like the presidential suite, which the president never stays in, but which they lease out to other presidents who are coming to visit, who want to grant Trump some emoluments, despite the fact that our Constitution prohibits those, and rent out the uber expensive presidential suite, unless, of course, his daughter is in town and wants to stay there for her birthday, in which case you're out of luck. But interesting that he would have decorated the walls with photos of the inauguration, capitalizing once again on the office, which presumably improper. But who's going to stop Donald Trump from improperly benefiting from the trappings of office? That's not coming up anytime soon. Anyway, let's keep that in mind, just in case that becomes a big deal later on in life or shows up in the Mueller report or anything like that. And you can say, you heard it here first. First thing in the morning and first anywhere. I don't know, except unless you were following Wooter earlier and then you heard it sooner. But shut up if that's the case. We need you to get on board here and promote the show because it's apparently worth a lot of money somehow. Somewhere, there's a bunch of people having a conference someplace today talking about how much money there is in this podcasting game. I haven't seen it, but I guess maybe podcast hosting services are doing pretty well because people keep churning out podcasts even though money doesn't necessarily flow in the other direction. But we have a cozy little corner of our podcasting world here. Things are going pretty well here, thanks to everyone who is a sponsor. There's a new way, by the way, to share funds, like, i.e. give them to me, I guess. It's not really much of a share. I share other things with you on behalf of those who receive those funds. How about that? That's one way to describe it. But perhaps I should let you know about that, plus one or two other, I guess, programming notes. But we'll start with the money one, although I cannot describe it because I don't have I think it may only be for Android app at the moment, and they're working on getting it live for the iPhone app. And I have the iPhone, and I have the iPhone app. But if you're a listener on Radio Public, one, I appreciate it. Two, I would remind you that if you are a listener on Radio Public, their goal, it seems, is to drive people to listen to the shows on Radio Public in their smartphone apps, as opposed to from, via the web on your desktop or laptop. And the paid listens program, to which we belong and which generates, an interesting little side stream of income and probably accounts for, I don't know. I haven't really looked lately, but every once in a while you get a payment from people who are listening, and I think they pay you every time you amass $100 or something. So it's nice, and there are some interim or some infrequent, pardon me, but every once in a while those payments do come through. So it's very nice. If you are listening on Radio Public, but not listening in the smartphone app to do it, for whatever reason, because they want to drive you to the smartphones and the smartphone apps, those listens, I do not believe, count toward the paid listens program. So if you are thinking, I like to listen on Radio Public because that generates income for the show, but you are listening on your laptop or desktop rather than your smartphone, consider doing that instead, moving to the smartphone app and listening there. And if you are listening on Radio Public or are interested in starting to listen on Radio Public, which is at radiopublic.com, and you might think, all right, I'll switch over to that platform. Here's another reason to do it. I guess if you were looking for a reason or another way to share money, they have a new feature in their app. If you listen to the show on their smartphone app, there's a tip button, a new feature that they've added for all their podcasters. I guess they were beta testing it on us and a few others. I think they've opened it up to pretty much everybody now. And you're listening to a show, you particularly enjoy that episode or any episode, you can, right in the app, send a tip to the podcaster who sets the whole thing up. And it's basically, of course, you're sharing some sort of information, presumably in some secure way that, nonetheless puts you at risk in the larger world. But you can send a tip of up to $100. I don't necessarily recommend that you tip everybody $100 for every episode, but if you're in a position to do that, God bless you, go ahead and do it. and or Flying Spaghetti Monster, bless you, whatever you like. Or, if you prefer, if you're one of those people that are into punishment, God damn you for sending $100. Just keep doing it. Whatever you like at that point. $100 buys you any blessing or curse you want, I suppose. But you can send up to $100. People send $1. People send $2, $5. I think I got a $5 tip the other day. And it's very nice. And they deposit it right in your account and everything. Pretty simple, and everything should be app-based. Why you can't listen to it on your desktop and have that count for paid listens, I don't know. But something, venture capitalist, yada, yada, monetizing podcast. I don't know. That's the way it works. Anyway, that's out there. So if any of you would like to experiment with that, that's a kind of a cool way of doing it. Ultimately, it would be interesting to see whether this or any other program they put in place allows for sort of micro payments. That's, I think, still the goal for podcasting, the podcasting sector, is to come up with some way of making it easy for people to pay, micro payments, whether it's 10 cents or 99 cents per episode of the podcast, without actually having to deal with a third-party vendor and go outside of the system and subscribe or make recurring payments. But this is, I guess, one step in the right direction. And in case you were waiting for such a system to be put in place to make a contribution to the show, I would let you know that that's there now, and you can go ahead and do it. And in case you were looking for a way to give away more money, but you had already done so, but you said, what a unique and novel way this is to give away money, well, that's available to you too. Here's something that doesn't cost any money for you, but can also help back up the show and help support the show. As you know, Libsyn is our primary podcast. They're our podcast host and distributor. Even Radio Public gleans its content from the Libsyn server site. So Libsyn is where we post. Several of you download directly from Libsyn. Other podcasting services that collect the content from Libsyn, they are conducting an audience survey. And I think really for all of their shows, but they make a little URL that is particular to your show. And I am given the opportunity to let you know that the audience survey is live, and that if you answer it, then presumably we will have put together some interesting demographics about the show that will not only help us understand who we're talking to, because I don't know who the hell you are, you people. I have no idea. I don't know what you're doing here. I thank you for being here. But somehow, if you gave me your age, I would know better. Something about something. Well, you know how these things go. They want to find out from you the age of the audience, and I don't know what else. Where you keep your money, and when are you frequently out of the home, and when can we come by, and do you have an alarm, and what's the code? I guess is all that. So I can take a look at the survey for you. We can talk about it, but they would like me to let you know that if you went to survey.libsyn, which is Libsyn, liberal, liberated, syndication, survey.libsyn.com/KagroX, with no spaces or anything, KAGROX, then you would have landed then at our survey. And, well, here's how they put it. If you would then be giving us a more meaningful way to interact with you. And I think more to the point, I suppose, advertisers interested in finding out about podcasts on which they can reach their desired demographic. They can then come and say, I would like to pay you, well, usually like, $10 to say, buy this product. And sometimes the product isn't even evil, and the people who are selling it are decent people, and occasionally they're very progressive people. And then they ask us, please promote the product. And I say, well, for that, I am very happy to do it. And we're able to pass that information on. And then guess what happens? We get money, and kids eat, they go to college, the house gets paid for, all of that sort of stuff. Good things. We got to pay for the Kagro in the Morning World headquarters somehow. and this is as good a way as any. Let me take a look at the survey just in case you want to know whether or not it's worth wasting your time over. I will waste my time now on it and yours preemptively, and then you can say, I'd like to do this again, and then you would go do it again. Survey.libsyn.com/KagroX. They will be asking you for your email address, and you know that means the Russians are coming for you. Your gender, which is always a sensitive subject, and look at this, they give you 3 whopping options on that one, so I think everybody's kind of covered there, but they won't let you get too specific. You got your age demographics, which are under 13 is where it begins, which I don't even think you're really supposed to fill out, quite honestly, and neither are you really probably supposed to fill out anything from 13 to 17. But hey, it's possible. And then they don't care how old you are. You're just an oldster if you're 55 years of age or older. That's very interesting. And it's a very telling thing about podcasts. And they probably are ageist, and we should do something about that. But if you are in between, you get to describe with some particularity how old you are. And presumably with that, they can say, 35 to 44, they don't want Nikes, they want Reeboks. And 45 to 54, why they want, I don't know, presumably, ads for walkers and scooters, etc. 55 plus, I guess, cemetery plots. I don't know. You know how they divide these things up. Marital status, I'm not sure how that helps them either, but there it is. Ethnicity, do you have a lot of choices? It's not a whole lot of choices, but I think it's probably about census range there. Education, no thanks, you could put. And then household income. And I assume there's no red asterisks anywhere indicating that anything is absolutely necessary. Then, of course, the last button is complete survey. You'll want to hit that one after. Although you might say, this really feels like an incomplete survey. Although, it's your survey. You tell me whether I've done enough. And then see how it goes from there. Very interesting. I don't know. It sounds like a good way to help convince people who are looking to spend money in the podcasting sector to do it based on how old you are and what your ethnicity is. I assume they're looking for household income. Aren't we all? That's what this is all about, really, at bottom. Okay, now on to the news. The news is everybody else is looking to get a hold of your household income. Everybody, can you believe it? I knew you weren't expecting that one. Look, and in fact, speaking of household income, that's an important factor in your taxation. Michael Musson says that, surprise, tax cuts led to ballooning deficits just like every other time. It is weird how that keeps happening. And yet, it's not sinking in with the Republicans somehow. He's retweeting, by the way, Michael, is Jim Tankersley, who's Ken Tankersley reporting to us from his perch as tax and economics reporter at the New York Times. You may recall that many Republicans said their tax cuts would, quote, pay for themselves through increased growth and revenues in the first 9 months. They are not by any measure. This according to the failing New York Times, somehow. And I guess, they're probably right about this. Things that are billed as paying for themselves just generally don't really seem to work out very well, do they? Wars don't really pay for themselves. Tax cuts never pay for themselves. I'm not sure why they keep saying they do, but I guess it works and people buy into it, and that must be the reason. Let's see. The article in the Times is budget deficit jumps nearly 17% in 2018. Thanks, budget wonk Paul Ryan. You're so serious. Oh, show us your PX90 workout. Or is it P90X, PDX, PDQ95? I don't know which one it was, how they call it, but he's so serious and he's such a wonk. The federal budget deficit swelled to $779 billion in fiscal year 2018, the Treasury Department said on Monday, driven in large part by a sharp decline in corporate tax revenues after the Trump tax cuts took effect. Boing! I can't believe that worked out that way. No one could have predicted that asking people for less money would result in having less money. Though really, I don't know if the evidence was ever there. I mean, asking people for more money doesn't necessarily result in more money either. I can promise you that. But okay, the deficit rose by nearly 17% year over year. I've not seen it expressed like that lately. Oh, by the way, did you know where the starting point was? $666 billion in 2017. What an appropriate amount. It is now on pace to top $1 trillion a year before the next presidential election. According to forecasts from the Trump administration and outside analysts, the deficit for the 2018 fiscal year, which ended September 30th, remember that, was the largest since 2012. The biggest, the greatest ever. When the economy and federal revenues were still recovering from the depths of the recession back in 2012, administration officials attributed the deficit's rise to greater federal spending. Wow, how could that happen? Because remember, budget wonk Paul Ryan was going to cut the spending in Washington. That's the only way to do things. Then, of course, these rises in greater federal spending included spending on the military and the domestic budget. These are all increases that President Trump approved this year because he's a businessman. And all of the rise in the deficit, or the greatest part of it, is attributed to that, not the $1.5 trillion tax cut, at least according to the administration officials. I don't know what other people think. President Trump prioritized making a significant investment in America's military after years of reductions in military spending, which didn't actually happen, undermined our preparedness and national security, which also didn't happen. That was the comment of Steve Mnuchin, Treasury Secretary. Going forward, the president's economic policies that have stimulated strong economic growth, combined with proposals to cut wasteful spending, will lead America toward a sustainable financial path. Never has, probably never will. But the numbers released by Mr. Mnuchin's department suggest falling revenues were a far larger contributor to the rising deficit than higher spending. Oh, total opposite. Wow, that's weird. Yeah. Yes. Get out. I heard you the first time, but you're correct. Federal revenues. Oh, I don't want to miss this part. Federal outlays increased for the fiscal year, but because the economy grew at a faster pace than outlays did the previous year, they fell as a share of the economy to 20.3% from 20.7%. Not too bad. That's actually good news. Federal revenues rose by 0.4% from fiscal year 2017. That was a slowdown from previous years. Revenues rose by 1.5% between fiscal years 2016 and 17. They rose by 0.5% between 2015 and 16, when economic growth was considerably slower than it has been over the last year. Between 2014 and 15, they rose by 7.5%. So that's significantly less these days. As a share of the economy, revenues fell to 16.5% in fiscal year 2018 from 17.2% the year before. Revenues are now nearly a percentage point lower than their average for the last 40 years, the Treasury Department said in its news release. Personal income tax collections rose slightly over the past fiscal year, the Treasury data show, though in September they were lower than they were a year ago. The big revenue drop came on the business side. Corporate tax revenues have fallen by a third from a comparable period a year ago. A third. That's quite a bit. A direct consequence of the tax law signed last year, which reduced the top corporate tax rate to 21% from 35%. So, for the full 2018 fiscal year, corporate tax receipts were nearly $205 billion. That's a drop from $297 billion in fiscal year 2017. $92 billion less. The 2018 numbers do not reflect the full year of effects of the Trump tax cuts, which also included a cut for individuals and owners of so-called pass-through corporations. Most of the new law's provisions took effect in January. Many Republicans, including Mnuchin, said during last year's debate over tax policy that the proposed tax cuts would pay for themselves by producing faster economic growth, which apparently did happen, and correspondingly higher federal revenues, which did not. Outside analysts disagreed. They thought it would not. And they were right. The Joint Committee on Taxation, the official tax scorekeeper of Congress, projected that the law would reduce revenues by $1 trillion, even when accounting for additional growth. One area of increased revenue came from Mr. Trump's tariffs. because they're not taxes, which he has imposed on foreign steel and aluminum and $250 billion worth of Chinese imports. While the tariffs have not begun to generate enough revenue to help pay down the national debt, as Mr. Trump had promised, because he's an idiot and he doesn't know what he's talking about, they brought in about $41.3 billion in 2018. That was up from about $34.6 billion in 2017, an increase of nearly 20%. So there you have it, numbers-wise. Thank you for bringing that one to our attention, Mike. And let's see, anything else that we want to catch up on? Yes, we can announce this one too. Just like Puerto Rico, Michael also reminds us, low death count and how many are missing seems to be anyone's guess. They're not really getting any information from off the ground in Florida, and you can't blame it this time on the place being a remote island in the middle of the ocean. He has included the Talking Points memo tweet that shows some of the devastation in the area. Someone walking over a pile of rubble from cinder blocks, etc. It's horrifying not knowing. Floridians search for missing loved ones after the storm. Right here, mainland USA, we are coming up on about a week since the storm, and there's missing people out there, and nobody knows how many people are missing. Nobody knows how many people were killed in this thing, and they have a low number of initial deaths, but the number will keep rising, and storm-related deaths will keep rising as missing people are found, for one thing, and those who aren't missing and who are known to have survived the storm will find themselves facing all sorts of peril and increasing medical issues and the like, all of which will only end up contributing to the death toll, which Donald Trump will later deny is true. Okay, well, there's a couple of interesting stories wrapped up in this piece. Maybe we'll explore it. Perhaps we move on to some other things. After this 2-minute break, we'll take a moment to grab a quick, refreshing sip of water and regroup and try and figure out what we'll be doing with the second hour, or hour and a half. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. When we move on, we should probably. Plenty of interesting anecdotes, though, buried in the TPM article about just how difficult it is proving to be to recover from the hurricane down there in whatever land, Florida Panhandle. Who brought this other thing to my attention? I have something here somewhere else. Oh, look at this. By the way, I'm on my way back looking for the comment here. Michael Sweeney, who tweets as under the handle of Hawk River, has this comment for us, I guess from yesterday. Your treatment of the Montana Trump clip on KITM today. This was tweeted to us yesterday. Talking about yesterday's show. Yes, reminded me of Science Fiction Theater 3000. Oh, it was Mystery Science Theater, right? Mystery Science Theater 3000. Should definitely do Political Theater 2020 with you and Greg and Armando doing live commentary of political clips. Actually, one not a bad idea at all. And it's something that we have thought of, I guess, way in the days way back before this show or even any thoughts of Daily Coast Radio. That was actually a thought that I had about taking C-SPAN feeds and doing political science theater 3000 instead of mystery science. Is it mystery science theater, or is it science fiction? Yeah, I'm not sure. I can't remember the name of the show. I never watched it. I just saw that it was on all the time. Very popular. People loved it. But we thought political science theater 3000, and you could watch C-SPAN and comment on what was going on and when someone was lying and why it was a lie and what procedurally was going on and what could be happening instead and why don't Democrats do this or that. I don't know how much of that people could actually stand, but it was an interesting idea right at the outset. The C-SPAN feed, I mean, if you think about it, the programming, when they're when they're covering proceedings on the House floor, and even when they're doing committee hearings, I mean, that's public business. They don't own that content. They own the C-SPAN version of it. You know how that works mechanically, by the way? I've explained this, I think, on the show, too. If you're an old hand, you may already know this, or you might say, that rings a bell, but I want to talk about it anyway, because something. And boy, there's a lot going on Twitter that we could be catching up on. But the way that works, the cameras are owned and operated even by the House of Representatives and their House item, and by the Senate. They're owned by the Congress. Those are public resources. C-SPAN probably brings their own cameras occasionally to committee rooms and committee hearings. I don't think that committee rooms are set up with their own television quality cameras. But at any rate, at least for the House and Senate floor feeds, those are public assets being controlled by public dollars and public workers. And what C-SPAN does is, or I guess we should just follow the chain of custody here. That signal goes up to the House radio and television galleries, and that makes it available for, all your local news channels or national news channels to get that feed and use it for the news. C-SPAN also uses it and just basically patches into that feed the board that I guess still exists, or maybe a virtual board now, up in the House radio and television galleries, and then pipes it out to the C-SPAN studios, and the C-SPAN studios then puts their own commentary and bumpers around it, and makes production choices about switching away to different programming when the House or Senate isn't in session. But that, like the graphics that say C-SPAN up in the corner, or sometimes they put up graphics when there's a vote going on that explain what's going on, or in the House they put up the totals of how many Republicans and Democrats have voted or not voted and which side they voted on, who's, voting present, etc. Things like that. All of that is sort of overlaid by C-SPAN and then piped out via satellite to cable providers. But the actual underlying video is something that theoretically is still public property, and a person or organization who could get themselves credentialed to access the House radio and television gallery would then be entitled to plug into the board and take that very same video and put your own overlay on it and pipe it out any way you want via the internet, what have you. It's not C-SPAN's content. They can't stop you from grabbing the same content. They can only stop you from grabbing their version of the content after they've added their value to the content. If you were to go on to your cable provider and download all of C-SPAN and then rebroadcast that as your own, that would be problematic. But if you were to simply take the raw feed and put Political Science Theater 3000 on it and add whatever commentary you want, you could do that. And I thought that actually might be a great idea. And by the way, how do you get credentialed to the House Radio and TV Gallery? And that's when we started to pursue that on behalf of Daily Kos. We made an application, not specifically with just that in mind, but certainly part of it. And this was early on, still in the earliest-ish days of blogging activity. And of course, we were rejected because bloggers, not serious, too partisan, whatever. I think the official explanation finally was, you raise money for candidates on your blog page, so we can't have that. We were, of course, including links to Act Blue pages where we didn't raise the money. Other people did. We simply made you aware of the fact that they were raising that money. That was enough for, at the time, the House Radio and Television Gallery to reject our application. Since then, of course, the place has been crammed full of people who raise money directly for candidates, but are more recognized brands like, Fox News, things like that. Never doubled back and tried that again. Could be that we might be able to shoehorn our way in, but, we went in other directions instead. Interesting story. Thank you for distracting me from the day's news with that anecdote. I know that wasn't your idea necessarily, but thanks, Michael, for the idea that was yours. What was I going back to find out? Oh, yes, I wanted to find out who had sent me this information, and I don't know if I'm going to find it right away, but somebody sent me this information that led me to, darn it, I know it's around here somewhere, the always interesting George Papadopoulos and his now wife. What's her first name? I can't remember. I'll look in the article here. And if you were the one who sent me this information, thanks very much. It was probably one of our regular contributors as well, and wish it was more readily available. But here we are. Papadopoulos' wife, Simona. That's right. Simona Mangiante. Is that right? Mangiante Papadopoulos. She just wanted to make her name longer. That was her chief interest in marrying George, I guess. She's back in the news, and at first I read the headline, and the headline was designed to do this to you and make you go, what? Oh my God. For wife of sentenced former Trump advisor, right? That's George Papadopoulos. A doctored passport photo stokes new questions. Thank you, Matthew Mosk and Caitlin Fulmer of ABC News, for clickbaiting us basically with that one. It's an interesting story, but it's not as interesting as it sounds. It made it sound like, oh, she doctored the photo in her passport. That's like a serious immigration problem. And you know how they are about immigration problems in this country and under this administration. And, for all the people who were like, hey, she's a weirdo and maybe even a spy of some kind, you say, doctored passport photo. That does seem weird. Well, it's not exactly that, but it doesn't exactly leave her in the clear either. Last week, the story says, in an effort to beat back accusations that she had lied about her identity. And remember, there are a lot of people who have questions about her identity. I'm including myself among them. And by the way, there were lots and lots of comments in responding to the original tweet I saw about this story that lots of other people are confused about her accent and convinced that it's something other than genuinely Italian. But I guess we're all wrong. If we're ever proven right, I'll say, I knew it all along. But to be honest with you, I think I'm convinced by those of you who said, no, I know plenty of Italians who have that accent. So I'm no expert in Italian accents, so I couldn't tell you. So I'm taking the word for it from people who claim to know better. Anyway, last week, in an effort to beat back accusations that she had lied about her identity, Simona Mangiante, and who lies about their identity, right, provided ABC News with a photograph of her Italian passport. The Trumpsters love sending people photos of their passports. I am not sure why that is. But, of course, Michael Cohen infamously did it, just showed a picture of the cover of his passport. Somehow was supposed to prove that he had never been to Prague. It wouldn't, because what would a cover of a passport tell you about anything? And two, of course, there's nothing about the way Europe handles its border crossings once you get into the common area, that would tell you anything about whether or not he had entered Czechoslovakia, the Czech Republic. Please, I'm 800 years old here. And in fact, I think it has since been established by the Mueller team that he did, in fact, visit Prague. He had simply entered Europe through Germany and then not had his passport stamped because it wouldn't be necessary, and crossing into the Czech Republic. Anyway, This now another controversy fueled by weird photographs of passports. So she sent her Italian passport picture to ABC News. But rather than quiet widespread speculation that the wife of the former Trump campaign foreign policy advisor George Papadopoulos was perhaps not who she presented herself to be, and I don't think I've noticed the recent speculation. But okay, now I feel like I have to throw it in there. Although there's some auto-playing video, I gotta stop here because it is ABC News, and they're, I guess, chiefly a visual operation. The widespread speculation that Papadopoulos' wife was not who she presented herself to be is this. It points me to another ABC News story by the same duo, headlined, "Wife of sentenced former Trump aide seeks to end speculation that she is a blank spy." Now, please, we'll play match game here. You please fill that in. Were people speculating that she was an Italian spy? Were people speculating that she was a, I don't know, Martian spy? No, everyone was speculating, apparently, that she is a Russian spy. This despite the fact that she's clearly Italian and speaks just like regular Italians do. And not at all like a Russian, which is kind of what I thought. Is that a very interesting story? Or is it a very short story? I guess is really the question. Do I share this whole thing? This is from October 10th, just before the weekend. I think was that last Thursday. She says, Simona Mangiante says she's officially tired of being asked whether she's a Russian spy. So I guess it's happening a lot. I'm not alone in making that quote-unquote mistake, I guess. The wife of the one-time Trump campaign foreign policy advisor George Papadopoulos, who was recently sentenced to a 2-week jail term, I wish that was longer, for lying to the FBI about his attempts to arrange a meeting between campaign and Russian officials, has faced questions about her background from social media sleuths, media personalities, and even her in-laws. I was going to say, social media sleuths, you can dismiss them. I'm one of those idiots. You don't listen to them. Media personalities, not quite, but I dismiss them too. But even her in-laws? Really? That's weird. When federal investigators from Special Counsel Robert Mueller's office charged her then fiancé in October 2017, they also pulled her aside to ask her whether she spoke Russian or had traveled to Moscow. She does not and had not, she replied, as she laughed off the implications. But of course, Michael Cohen said, haven't been to Prague, but then he was. Didn't have a meeting with the Russians, but they did. Was no collusion, but there was. Okay. For Mangiante, a trained lawyer turned aspiring actress, happens a lot, those questions are no longer a laughing matter. She's in the process of hiring an attorney, because she's an attorney, to try to put a stop to speculation about her allegiances, fearing that the swirling rumors have stalled her efforts to secure a work permit to begin an acting job she says she has landed in Hollywood. Of course, getting a work permit would, maybe be a difficult thing in a Trump administration when your husband has just gone to jail for admitting that he was trying to set up meetings with Trump's team and the Russians. That's probably your bigger problem, not whether or not if you're a Russian spy, you'll probably get that. If you were, that's right. You should claim to be a Russian spy. Then you'd get your work permit. I don't know what's wrong with you. Maybe she's telling the truth. I'm facing something worse than character assassination, Mangiante told ABC News. I have studied so long to be where I am. No, you haven't. I mean, you did, but then why are you trying to leave where you are? You don't have to go to law school and study so long to have a Hollywood acting job. Anyway, and there is this effort to completely destroy all my achievements over lies, which is, I'm sure, frustrating and everything. On the other hand, if you studied to be a Hollywood actor by studying how can I fake my accent or anything like that, then maybe you have studied so long to be here. And you are a Russian spy. So Mangiante is pushing back, trying to clarify some of the disputed details of her background. She provided ABC News with an image of her Italian passport to verify her age, 34, and shared the names of contacts who could confirm her work history. Now, the article goes on from there, but now it would be time to flip back to the original article that I was first reading. See what's happening here? ABC News says, all right, people say you're a Russian spy. What do you have to say to that? Oh my gosh, ridiculous. I love Chef Boyardee products. Would a Russian say that? That's genuinely Italian. Come on. Ravioli? Fantastic. Everyone loves it. Okay. So prove it. Show me some kind of document. Okay, fine. I'll give you, here's a picture of my Italian passport to verify that I am who I say I am, and I am age 34. To verify her age. Now, that's another thing. There's no link here that says, yes, people were saying, weird, she sounds Russian, she kind of looks Russian, she's mixed up in a situation where there's just too many Russians to go around here, and it's really suspicious. Are you Russian? And her answer is, of course I'm not Russian, I'm 34. So, like, what's that supposed to mean? I don't know. But she's verifying her age for some reason with the picture of this passport. Here's the problem. We flip back now to where we started, where we had said, rather than quiet, widespread speculation that the wife of George Papadopoulos was perhaps not who she presented herself to be, that passport photo has now raised more questions than it has answered, because Mangiante acknowledged on Monday, yesterday, that she altered the date of birth on the photograph to disguise her age. She now says she is 37, not 34 years old, which is not a big deal by itself. But recall, we were just reading, are you sure you are who you say you are? You could be a Russian spy. I'm not a Russian spy. Why, look, here's a picture of my Italian passport. And it says, of course, just like you all know to be true, I am 34 years old, which is critically important to proving that you're not Russian. Everyone knows Russia was invented in, 34 years ago? There was no Russia 37 years ago. I don't know. I don't know what she thought she was trying to prove, but she was trying to prove it. And now, 3 days later, basically, Thursday to Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. 4 days later, she's having to say, okay, I sent you a photo as proof, and I faked the photo. What's the big deal? The point is the underlying truth is still the same. I am exactly who I say I am. Here's the proof. It's doctored proof, but it's proof. Don't you what is wrong with you people? I'm a trained lawyer. You don't understand evidence. I doctored the evidence so that you would think a different thing than was actually true. Why are you bothering me about this? I mean, what a thing to do. Talk about stepping on a rake, you know? You're asked to provide some proof, and you take this photograph and you're like, let me just Photoshop it a little bit. What kind of person does this? Now, she goes on to say, I did happen to lie about my age. I happened to lie about my age. Oh, Armando's had all he can take of this. I did happen to lie about my age, like it just was an accident. Mangiante said in a statement to ABC News, I don't owe anyone an explanation about it. And that's it, period. I don't owe anyone an explanation about it. And then ABC News reporters then move on. Papadopoulos is preparing to serve a 2-week jail term, blah, blah. No follow-up like, what do you mean you don't owe an explanation about it? Armando, are you listening in here? Or are you?
Yeah, I'm intrigued by the Papadopoulos wife story. And I have two bits of pearls of wisdom.
Yeah. Okay.
First, this is such an inept performance.
That
it either disproves that she's a Russian spy because she's that inept, or it proves she's a Russian spy because it's a tremendous fake out by being this bad at it.
Yeah, maybe. There is another article I have in Pocket about somebody writing, or maybe it was just a tweet, just saying everybody thinks that Russian intelligence operatives are so sophisticated, but they really keep self-owning on just about everything.
Right.
It's only like a couple weeks ago since the assassination team that got picked up in
Salisbury Cathedral.
Salisbury. We were just looking at Cathedral with nerve agent. What is wrong? I don't know. But this one is amazing. And what gall, too, to say, well, first of all, to offer, of course I'm not Russian. I'm 34. Like, what a hand-waving thing that is. Like,
I still actually, the premise doesn't understand. I don't think it, I mean, maybe people are saying she's not really Italian. I thought the premise was she might be an Italian who was been hired as a Russian spy.
Yes, that could certainly be. I mean, Donald Trump is an American who's hired as a Russian spy.
Mata Hari wasn't German, but she was a German spy.
She did not sound German. Quite honestly.
Wasn't.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't tell anybody anything.
I just feel like we're all getting collectively stupider.
I guess so.
Because the whole thing doesn't make sense. I mean, as a debunking, I'm not a Russian spy. Look, I'm Italian. It's like, what? What does that mean?
I don't.
You could be an Italian Russian spy. What are you talking about?
Yeah, that doesn't help.
You know, Kim Philby wasn't Russian either, just so you know.
Okay. See, they very frequently recruit other people. But even then it's like, well, okay, so in a very simplistic person's mind, I suppose it's possible they might believe, well, she's not a Russian spy, she's Italian. So, okay.
Okay, but that's what I'm saying. We've gotten
right.
really stupid if that's actually an argument that
I guess so.
Consider.
Then it's like, well, but then it says, okay, so if I proved to you that I was Italian, would you believe that I wasn't a Russian spy? Duh, yes, I would. Okay, good, fine. Here's a fake photo of an Italian passport. Okay, so what exactly? So that proves I'm Italian. It proves you're a fake Italian.
It proves you have an Italian passport, maybe, because I don't even know if it's a genuine passport.
Right.
What are you talking about?
That
I mean, now you tell me you have the capacity of altering the passport.
I mean,
so what the hell is it proving? Anything?
Yeah, I don't have it. What it proves is that you're somebody who has motive and to do this, and then actually did modify your You didn't modify your passport. You modified the photo of it. And why would anybody do that? Well, she goes on to say, I'm trying to become a Hollywood actor. You know how they are about age.
No, I mean, there's a plausible excuse for why she altered the age on her passport.
It's an
to be
excuse.
a little younger, so Hollywood takes her. Hollywood. I mean, come on, what movie is she in? Has she ever acted before?
Orange is the New Black, maybe. I don't know.
I mean, it's insanity.
It's kind of dumb, and I understand the notion of, well, okay, I'll fake to Hollywood that I'm 34, not 37. Although, really, honestly, in Hollywood, 34 isn't going to buy you anything. The 3-year difference doesn't really make any sense Hollywood-wise.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it doesn't particularly, but at least it's not in the realm of the hell are you talking about?
It's not spycraft.
Maybe there's that.
I guess. But yeah, I mean, the other thing is sort of, I don't know. A 3-year difference, A, it makes no sense in the Hollywood context. B, it's the sort of thing that might only make sense like, all right, well, if I am not Simona Mangiante for whatever reason, and I faked that up, and somewhere along the line I screwed it up, and I said, I'm Simona Mangiante, 34-year-old Italian, and then somebody surfaced the records and say, Simona Mangiante was an Italian woman who died in her late teens, who would now currently be 37, not 34. Oh, yeah, that's what I mean. I'm 37, not 34. Actually makes about as much sense as I'm almost in a Hollywood blockbuster, and 3 years is going to make it happen.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. That's why I say we've all gotten collectively stupid. We're arguing over.
Well, that's a stupid thing, and that's my fault.
What's on its face is ridiculous.
Yes.
And everything Trump says is just. By the way.
Yes.
Trump has told 100 more ridiculous stories than this.
Yes, of course. And just yesterday he did. I mean,
just this morning.
Oh, I didn't even hear what he said this morning.
I have no financial interest in Saudi Arabia or Russia.
Yes, right. And everyone believed it when he said it about Russia, and now he says the same thing. Hey, look, here's a stack of papers proving I have paper.
Right. This is what's amazing. I mean, the funny thing about the Saudi story, and Fahrenholt has documented this.
Mm.
The Saudis single-handedly saved the year for the Trump organization by spending tens of millions of dollars in his hotels.
Yeah.
What do you mean you have no financial connections to the Saudis? You have a very direct and proven financial connection to the Saudis.
Yeah, well, in his definition, I don't own a hotel in Saudi Arabia.
You're right, but that's...
Right.
Have we gotten that stupid?
I don't know, but it appears to work. I mean, I was just
it's
before
like the Russian connection. Oh, I have nothing in Russia. No, the Russians brought their money to you.
Yeah, right. Well, I guess.
Including $98 million gift that is still incredible and not explainable for that mansion in Palm Beach, which sold at the highest price by double that any mansion in Palm Beach has ever sold ever, including in the last 10 years.
Yes.
At the height of the economic meltdown.
Yes, but something. 34, not 37. I don't know. And you are correct about being collectively dumber. The comment I made just before you were calling was that remember that this all stems from the article last week by the same ABC reporters saying, hey, lots of people think you're a Russian spy. Can you help us prove that you're not a Russian spy?
Here's my altered passport.
Here's a passport. And then you altered it. And her comment to them is, okay, you caught me in a lie about my age, and I altered the photo that I sent you as proof. Now, it's not altering my passport, so that's not a crime. I'm altering the photo of a passport. There's nothing wrong with that, except, of course, the photo is being offered as evidence that I'm not a spy, but I altered the photo. And then she says,
Italy, but in the United States, altering the photo on your passport is a crime.
Yes. Oh, she doesn't. Now, again, just to be clear, she doesn't alter the photo in her passport. She alters a photo that she took of her passport. But
okay, so she didn't alter the actual passport.
No.
She altered the photo.
Yes.
Okay, so
I mean, that's not a crime,
how do we know
but
this is an actual passport, though. I mean,
right.
It's a photo of some passport.
Yes, and we have that
like
problem.
She gave her passport or showed it to somebody. I
no,
mean, I don't know.
The thing is, that she offered this as proof that she wasn't a Russian spy, and then the proof turned out to have been faked. And she says to ABC News, the investigative reporters at ABC News, okay, you caught me, I lied about my age, but I don't owe you an explanation of it. And they say, moving on to the next question, about which we know nothing.
Oh, yeah. Well, she didn't offer us an explanation.
Right.
So, right.
Well, we're about to take a 1 minute break here, and we'll be right back, but we can continue with this on the other side.
God knows if she's a Russian spy or not. It's all weird to me. I think the weirdest
Welcome
part
back to the show.
We're coming back.
Yes, we are back, and we just talked straight through the thing. We'll have to recreate parts of that for those of you who are enjoying the break, but I can't believe when we went into the break, you were saying, again, how stupid are we? And it bothers me that the rest of this article is, I mean, it's still about this question, but how you just let it lie. Well, okay, I did happen to lie about my age. I happened to. Like, I accidentally lied about my age with a Photoshop. Mangiante said in a statement to ABC News, I don't owe anyone an explanation about it. And it's like the rest of the article should be, experts disagreed. She did owe people an explanation about it. And again, it's not that she altered her passport, which would be a much more serious thing. Then it would just be like, all right, I'll just arrest her at this point. But she altered the proof. I mean, she probably thinks like Trump. Well, what? I'm answering ABC News. It's not like it's some high tribunal. No,
right,
but
I can lie to everybody. But
yeah.
Who does Trump not lie to? And, I circle back on this Papadopoulos story to his sentencing.
Yes, that's in this
and
next
how
paragraph.
Remorseful he was. And he was just a kid who didn't know what he was doing.
Yeah.
He was frightened. And
oh, my
gosh. So sorry.
All right, so we'll give you 2 weeks. That's in the next paragraph.
We'll give you 2 weeks.
Papadopoulos is...
Even the 2 weeks weren't even up, and he's out there, like, attacking...
I mean,
law enforcement.
And where's Mueller in this? Where I don't know what sort of leverage they have to go back again. But at this point, I would be tearing my hair out in Mueller's office. Like, he hasn't even finished his 2 weeks jail term, and his wife is already lying and photoshopping passport things.
Exactly. So I don't know what that's still. I'd love to hear the backstory on that. It could be that he doesn't have anything. They said, "Screw it, we're not going to waste any time with this jerk."
I guess.
But I think that might have been a mistake because now people think they can just do whatever Papadopoulos did, and go back and keep doing what they're doing.
And originally, I mean, they were like, oh, well, he's not going to get sentenced to anything because he's supposed to be a cooperating witness. And then he changed his mind, and they said, well, we can't let you get away with that. Then he cried, and they said, all right, fine, 2 weeks. And before the 2 weeks even started, because this is the article says, Papadopoulos is preparing to serve a 2-week jail term. Like,
you think that judge feels stupid now? Or
I guess so. Oh my God! While he's preparing, his wife is out, lying to ABC News. And why?
Mind you, she was lying about
Hollywood
stuff the whole time. She was out there on Fox.
Yeah, and he didn't do anything. It's not like, and then he did do everything. And he was a coffee boy. Then he wasn't a coffee boy. He's preparing for a 2-week jail term, which is like, again, what do you, you go in.
No,
it's serious.
He's a felon. I get all that, but my point is.
I know.
I'd love to hear the backstory on that.
Well,
at some point, and we'll hear it 10 years from now.
Like, why the 2 weeks? Well,
the curious case of George Papadopoulos.
Right.
Yeah, the 2 weeks and everything. I mean, and why didn't they put on a superseding indictment? They could have scared the hell out of him.
I don't know. I guess because his wife was.
I think maybe he just didn't have that much. I mean, they got all he had, and they said, there's nothing left.
Maybe. What's in the rest of this article? I know. I feel like it is, but it's so incredible. So he's preparing to serve his 2-week jail term for lying to the FBI about his attempts to arrange a meeting between the Trump campaign and Russian officials. His wife, who for months served as his public spokesman and defender, has faced persistent questions about her own background from social media sleuths, media personalities, and even her in-laws. And incredibly not, officialdom, but what can you do? Trump runs most of that. Last week, she attempted to mount a counterattack on those who suggested she has lied about her past, sharing names of people she identified as former co-workers from the legal community and sharing a photo of the identifying information in her passport. So again, she's mounting a counterattack on those who have suggested that she's lied about her past. How does she do it? Lying about her past. And we're like, you know what? We have to move on to the next subject. On Monday, Mangiante acknowledged altering the passport photo. That is, they should have said the photo of the passport.
The photo of the passport.
After she faced pressure on...
she had a retouched photo.
Yeah, now if she had that would just be, sorry, Russian spy, clink. That's just dumb. But, and I think they were doing that on purpose with the headline. But she altered the photo of her passport after she faced pressure online from an independent journalist who has raised persistent questions about her identity. I don't know this. The journalist, Scott Stedman, reported on Twitter. I don't know. Is that a...
Go ahead.
Well, okay. Reported on Twitter that he had obtained a copy of Mangiante's marriage certificate where the date of birth listed differed from the one on the passport photo provided to ABC News.
So he caught her.
Yeah. Her date of birth also differed on an Italian legal database, as ABC News noted in its reporting last week. Mangiante said she altered the date in order to appear younger. Now, that wouldn't help her appear younger. That would make people who were reading her age think she was younger, but she doesn't appear younger in the strictest sense, which she considered an age-old desire of women everywhere, but especially in Hollywood, where she has moved to pursue an acting career while her husband's in jail. She argued that the discrepancy is proof of nothing more malicious than a bit of vanity, but felt it was important to now come clean. I admitted being born in 1981, she said, that the picture of my passport was photoshopped to provoke journalists. This is her fantastic Italian coming through, and her English. It's not at all Russian. To provoke journalists. I mean, to provoke a journalist. Chef of Boyardee ravioli meatball. I don't know. It was ridiculous. The picture of my passport was photoshopped to provoke journalists. I suppose she meant. So this is
like Melania's jacket.
Yes, right. I guess so. I changed it. Yes. Why did you change it? To be in Hollywood. Oh, but that's crazy. 3 years wouldn't buy you anything. I mean, to provoke journalists. Okay.
To own the libs.
That must be it. So she did it to provoke journalists, but that I was the one to set the record straight. I was the one to set the record straight. You're busted.
Did it.
All right, you caught me.
Away his scoop.
Right. Here's this and here's this. You're busted, right? Yes, you caught me. It's true. I'm born in 1981, which I was the first to admit. No, I just caught you. That's why you. Oh, are you now? You're lying about whether or not you admitted it.
The lie.
Yes. There's no end to the lies. When were you born? 1984. No, you weren't. You were born in 1981. I know exactly, and that's why I admitted it.
I'm the first to say that.
I don't understand why people think I'm a liar. Okay.
You see how we're going down holes and descent into the hell of stupid? It's
right.
Unbelievable.
Well, here we are. We now need the Zillow layout of her house to figure this out. And you're right. Just thing after thing. It's all hand waving and distraction. Trump is a liar, a thief, a murderer, and a spy. Just to establish that at the outset. I think I should have said that at the start of the program. And we're only arguing about the particulars now. That's where we are.
And we're pretending there's something to argue about in terms of him just being. Everything he says is a lie. He never says anything that's true. I actually think they should have a different did Trump tell the truth check. Everything's a lie.
Well, right. It would be
We
easier.
should list that the actual things that he said are true. And if you get to 100, you'll be amazed.
Yes.
I'm talking about over 3 years.
Yeah. Everything I've been doing these days on Twitter, every time one of them says anything, here's a lesson in how you read something a Trump or a Trumpster says. It's the opposite. Thank you.
No,
that is the answer.
You have to start from the premise. This is obviously a lie. Now, let's see if there's any truths that he might be pointing to from his lies. You could go through the thing. He attacked Warren this morning. All his tweets are lies, except for a few things in there. But 7 of them...
Like where his rallies are going to be. Those are true.
Right. No, last night, that's another wonderful example. He lied. I'm looking for the biggest stadium in Texas.
Oh, yeah, wait a minute. I'm sorry. I have to retract that. Yeah, he lied about where his rally was going to be.
I'm going looking. And literally, he picked the third biggest venue in the one complex he was in. Because that complex had the football field, which where the Texans play, the whole 70,000 or whatever. It had the basketball arena. No, that's not true. There was just an arena that holds, I don't know, 15,000 or 16,000 in the same complex.
Yeah.
And he hit the third one, the third biggest in the complex.
And he won't fill it.
He won't fill it. I mean, they
8,
picked 8,000 for a reason, because there's not 8,000 people in Houston that are probably going to come out. They're going to have to bust them in from another country or something, from Russia.
I guess Italia. Could be either.
Literally, he lies about everything.
And all the people around him as well.
And he makes stupid arguments and make no sense. The NAFTA thing. NAFTA was terrible, blah, blah. He just did. This is NAFTA. He changed 2 little things in NAFTA. That's all he did.
Yeah, he changed the name.
He changed the name, and he put in this content thing, which frankly isn't necessarily going to be good for the United States. Most likely it's going to be good for Mexico.
Yes. So,
I get it. We're drowned in stupid.
Yes.
And I do blame the media, because instead of what you said, let's just keep fact-checking. What do you mean keep fact-checking? This is a liar, an absolute liar. There's nothing more to talk about. Yep. Sorry to yell.
No, it's it's well warranted. Although, again, I mean, at the end of it, you're justified in doing it. But at the end, you're like, I've just yelled about Simona Mangiante's photoshopped photo of her passport.
I think like at least it's like, what is wrong with ABC? Why are you pretending there's any truth in this thing?
I have no idea.
Say, here's my story, and I say this seriously. Continued lies by Papadopoulos' wife fuels further suspicion that she's a Russian spy.
That's what it really is. I guess they decided
Isn't
not
that
to go
the real
with that.
story here?
It is. And
I mean, that's an objective headline I just wrote.
Yes.
Isn't that true?
Yes, it is. And again, I originally thought maybe I was being foolish in suspecting that there was something really wrong with this woman and that she was a Russian spy. And then I thought, all right, maybe I'm not so smart because it's online Twitter sleuths and media personalities, etc., who are asking these questions. But as it turns out, now here's the next paragraph. So there was what's his name? Scott Stedman, who catches her in this discrepancy. And I thought, all right, well, I've seen people who do, in fact, catch people in discrepancies that turn out to be real discrepancies on Twitter, but that doesn't necessarily establish them as a bona fide investigator. But Stedman, it says, was not the first to harbor doubts about Mangiante's personal history. When federal investigators from Special Counsel Robert Mueller's office charged her then-fiancé in October of 2017, this was mentioned in the other article here, they also pulled her aside to ask whether she spoke Russian or had ever traveled to Moscow. She denied both of those things, by the way. We learned that from the other article. But, I don't think...
She also denied being 37.
Well, yes, so that's true, too. We do have that problem. But, Robert Mueller's investigators are not just asking everyone in America whether they speak Russian or have ever traveled to Moscow. They had suspicions of her for a couple of reasons, not the least of which is, of course, her husband was trying to arrange the meeting with Russians. But I assume somebody somewhere said, she does sound curiously Russian rather than Italian, don't you think? And I'm sure 9 out of the 10 people said, no, that's an Italian accent. But one person said, I just want to ask her. So, okay, that's something for me to cling to. But yeah, she keeps, in the months that followed, especially when she became more vocal in public, she was asked repeatedly if she was concealing any ties to foreign intelligence outfits. People can't stop asking her this, and she can't figure out why it is. But she thinks she's going to quiet all the rumors with a photoshopped picture of her passport because she's huge in Hollywood. Which
she's got her big break. They're about to cast her as the lead in one of the Marvel movies.
Yes.
What are we talking about? Yeah, shouldn't you check that out? I said, well, what movie are you supposedly trying them up for? I can't talk about that.
Yes, From Russia with Love. It's a remake.
No, off the record. I just like to check it.
Okay.
So I can call and say if this is real. It's off the record.
Okay.
I'm replacing Gal Gadot, and I'm going to be the new Wonder Woman.
Yes. Shh. Keep it quiet because of my accent. Yeah,
but only if I'm 34. I'm 37. I'm out.
I'm out. Right. I got to play Diana's mother. Well, you know how it is in Hollywood. That's true. And she wasn't getting any role. One, she wasn't getting anything. Period.
Of course
2,
not.
If she was getting it as the 30 to 40 something, not, the 20 something. It doesn't matter whether she's 34.
I don't know how. I'm no expert at the movie business, but I've never heard of a 37-year-old former lawyer walking over to Hollywood after marrying a Russian spy.
Yes.
And being cast the lead in the new big movie. That would be something new.
That would be. And so that would be super exciting and interesting, and we can all follow it. And I can't wait to buy tickets to that movie, which I don't know.
You never know. Maybe there's a movie that the Russians are bankrolling, and this is the payoff.
Yeah, could be. That'll convince me that she didn't Photoshop her picture of her passport somehow. I don't really know. Again, with the passports, I had to mention, Michael Cohen, I've never been to Prague, and so here's a picture of the cover of my passport. And he walks away from it like, yeah, that proves it. I did my job as a lawyer.
I don't know what's going on with Michael Cohen. And I don't know that he's worth much of anything anymore. But I still think the best twist in that story was Lanny Davis coming on as his lawyer. What the hell was that?
I have no idea.
It was crazy.
I'm trying to scan this other article because it's really, I was astonished mostly by the fact that it had only been 4 days since she had lied to these same reporters, and they still were like, well, she says it was Hollywood.
Well, let's fact check the rest of your claims.
Yeah, maybe they're working on a new story and they need 4 more days. And on October, when was this date lined? On October 19th, coming up, we're going to have something that says, Okay, I was born in Moscow and I'm a KGB agent, but I quit. I gave it up, and I changed. I don't know why you're bothering me so much.
Yeah, I am waiting for Code Red moments, though.
You're goddamn right. I'm a Russian agent.
Yeah, Roger Stone or Trump saying, "Yeah, of course the Russians help me."
Yeah.
What are you, stupid?
It could happen with the Saudis next. That's possible. He's had to shift his attention to denying his connections there.
Yeah, I heard Pompeo had a great meeting this morning. It took 10 minutes.
Oh, yeah? All right. I keep
Quick
thinking
investigation is to the claims.
Yeah. Well, maybe they'll give it a week. Like,
yeah, I mean, you heard all the off-color
Kagro.
soft jokes on Twitter yesterday. I mean,
yes.
I couldn't do that one. I just, the guy's dead.
Yeah.
And got dismembered. I mean, I can't do a Saul joke. But,
Still, I mean, yeah, I am astonished by this. It occurred to me this morning, the weird things that people who Trump just happens to be close friends with keep around, either on their person or happen to travel with. Like when he was saying, "Oh, it could have been rogue killers," the rogue killers roaming the Saudi consulate with bone saws.
Right. Well, look at the Trump's closest friends, Putin.
Yes.
Absolute murder.
Right.
Kim Jong-il. By the way, this whole Kim Jong whatever. I think it's ill. Stuff.
Yes.
Remember Otto Warmbier or Warmbier?
Yes.
Remember that? The big show about Otto Warmbier?
Yeah.
That's, Otto Warmbier was murdered by this guy that is Trump's best friend.
They're in love.
They love each other.
Yes. From the letters.
And then now you have
big
the
oversized
Saudis
letters
who murdered a journalist basically openly.
But they buy apartments from me. This is what he has
Those
said.
are his. That's the guy in the Philippines, Duterte, who,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is he friends with somebody who's not a murderer?
I'm not sure. I can't think of any.
Question.
Joey No Socks is probably a murderer.
In the international community, every one of them is a murderer.
International, yes. Well, I was saying that the various things that have come up that we've waved away as like, well, I can't connect that to anything. I had a bone saw with me for no reason. I am looking at cathedrals with nerve agent in my pocket. I melted the hot tub in my previous house with acid.
And you know what Trump says, of course, and he's said it many times. It's always worth revisiting. I said, "Oh, do you think we were saints?" Or whatever he said about when people said, "Oh, do you think we haven't done all those things?"
We have.
He's basically a conspiracy theorist, and he's the president.
Yes, well, that's true. And he's never cracked the files on any of those either. By the way, a good conspiracy theorist, what makes a good conspiracy theorist is high energy, by the way. And of course, he's a sluggard. And remember, one of the things he was going to do, the basic bare minimum that you can expect from a conspiracy theorist president is getting into office and saying, "I'm going to open the JFK files." Right?
And he said it.
He said he was going to do that, and then he took a nap on that one. You'd think he'd be cracking open, Area 51 files, and what about Ted Cruz's dad killing Kennedy? I'm going to check that out, too.
That'll be in the JFK files.
Yeah,
absolutely.
right.
So, how come he didn't look that one up?
I don't know.
He can announce the findings at the big rally at the third largest venue in the complex in Houston.
Yeah, I guess he's got the time for it, but I don't know.
I mean, he brazenly lied about it. Literally, he issued his tweet, and 5 minutes later, they announced the venue, and it's the third largest in this complex and about the 35,000th largest in Texas.
Yeah.
And it's like, I lied. Who the hell cares? I get to lie about everything. I get to shoot people on Fifth Avenue.
Yes. He's interested in trying that one out soon.
And you can't make voters care or not care, but you're a media organization. Your business is supposedly facts. You should care.
Yes.
And this should be the front page news. The president lies again.
Yes,
and the president lies all the time. It shouldn't be going to Trump voters in a somewhere in a deep red state. It should be this is unprecedented. Every day there has never been a bigger liar ever.
Yeah, although again,
and I'm not living into politics or public figures. I've never seen a guy lie as much. In your daily life, people, there are people that lie a lot, right? They don't lie as much as Trump.
And not often about the same things. I mean, there are so many dumb things that he lies about that don't make any sense. That I can't see any reason why it would play to his advantage to lie about, but he does. I don't really know what to say about it other than, yeah, he does do this all the time.
I mean, and the question is, really, is it always deliberate lies, or does he is he a fantasist? Does he start to believe his lies? Sometimes I think he knows he's lying, but sometimes part of it is he believes his own lies. He's mentally ill.
I think that's certainly part of it, and I think he enjoys when in his clearer moments. I think he enjoys knowing he's getting away with the lies. I think he delights in, and quite honestly, I can hardly blame him. I guess if I were in a similar position at some point, it would become addicting for me to say, I love making fun of the media by lying to their faces and having them say, at worst, he misleadingly said, right. I am a Martian
Falsely
and I
states.
fly on a, right.
Without my favorite is the without evidence one. Without evidence, Trump says.
Yeah.
Without evidence.
I mean, we all speak without evidence.
Means it's a lie.
As it turns out, it's a lie. That's the worst thing you can say without evidence. But knowing that there was no evidence to begin with, he said it anyway. Okay. That's what actually happened. We checked and there was no evidence. I asked him and he said, I have evidence, but it turns out he didn't. No, he never even said he had evidence. He just says
right.
Things.
And of course, what's most remarkable, even to this day, they cannot grapple with how bad they've failed covering Trump.
Yeah, they don't have the tools.
They don't have the capacity, the tools. They don't know how to do it, and they won't ever take a step back and try to figure it out. I mean, the New York Times is out there blasting out, we will not become the opposition. I said, dude, we know.
Yeah.
You don't have to blast that one out. That we understand that. You do not challenge the falsehoods of Trump. You don't. You do a terrible job. You've failed the country. You've failed your role as paper of record. And everybody knows it. I'm sorry. We beat you up, and you say, well, both sides are beating me up. No, Trump's lying when he beats you up. He loves you. He loves you. You do nothing but help him.
Yeah, I'm not certain why they don't see it. I don't know why any news organization doesn't see it.
By the way, for the New York Times, it'll be my last thing, because then I'll leave at 10:30. Give you your last part of your show.
All right.
It's not just the whole gentility, civility, the jarredness of confronting a president on his lies. It's the fact that Politico, the entire political coverage team, moved and became the New York Times political coverage team. There's no worse equipped group of reporters and philosophy than Politico to cover Trump.
I guess.
Mark Halperin is a guy we've forgotten about because, thank God, he's been destroyed, basically.
Yes. Okay.
I'm sure they'll try to sneak him back in again and again, but it's going to be hard because they want to beat up on Bill Clinton too, so they can't be for Mark Halperin. But remember how he covered Trump, and think of Mark Halperin running the New York Times, because it's basically the same philosophy.
Yes, that's
it.
True.
Really is. I think if people were honest about what the New York Times is, think as if Mark Halperin was running the New York Times political coverage. That's what you have.
They like riding on the helicopter.
But that's what you hired. They hired all these political people from Haberman on down, and that's their mentality.
Yes,
so,
that's
course
problematic. I don't think we've seen that. Yeah. Well, it's designed to, I guess.
Drudge runs their world, in essence. Now, Drudge isn't anybody anymore, but now Drudge runs the New York Times political department.
No wonder it feels behind the times, and there's no tools to deal with this.
Yeah, well, the opposite. Yes. I mean, and did you see the tweet? Okay, there's 2 minutes to go. Last thought, then I'm out of here.
Okay.
Did you see the New York Times political desk tweet asking for African Americans who are being shunned for supporting Trump?
Yes, this is a reporting style now. I like this. If you will say this thing, I will quote you. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. I'll say it.
You know,
Good,
the running joke was, I guess they run out of white people who support Trump to interview, so now they're looking for black people to interview who support Trump.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. I'm amazed by that. I'm amazed by CNN. Similarly, I noticed the other day something that Greg shared, and then I watched the clip, and then I noticed, hey, there's something wrong with this clip. I don't know who the host was. She doesn't ring a bell for me, but she was saying she put together a panel of independent swing voters who had voted for Trump and now regretted it, which at least was a change of pace. But she starts off by saying, "This, you're all independent voters. Everybody is always pursuing." And in the course of the 5 minutes that they spend with the panel, 2 of them say, "I'm a lifelong Republican and I hate Trump now." And it's like, wait a minute, you said you're an independent. Oh yeah, right. Crap. Yeah, so CNN doing it too. All right, thanks Armando. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you. You got me going with that crazy Italian story. All right, have a good one.
Everyone loved it. Okay. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio, and it is the Kagro in the Morning Show. Armando's done, although many of you, and including me, enjoyed the rant. We basically painted ourselves into a corner admitting that this was a tremendous waste of time, but just angry once again that, wherever you turn, there's a, 1,000-foot deep hole that you could keep digging at the bottom of and still not hit bottom and still not explain why Trump and Trump-connected people were lying so furiously and with such passion about this thing, except to distract you from the other thing. But I'll be okay come election day. I know what I'm doing, and no amount of lies from anybody is going to deter me from doing my job there. And then, and I doubt very many people who are committed to voting and actually making a difference in putting a stop to this are going to be distracted per se. But the time between now and then, you could be spending it calling undecided voters if there are such things. But yes, this was, speaking of undecided voters, that was the closing comment just before the break. Did I put this thing aside anywhere? I don't know. There was a CNN panel. I know I tweeted about it early-ish yesterday. And I could probably find it around here somewhere if I scroll far enough back. But Greg was sending it around yesterday, and it was a very interesting, segment and all. And I'm sure that they were, as billed, people who had voted for Trump and who now regretted it. But it was very weird that CNN's host, anyway, and I don't know whether that was researched and prepared remarks she was reading off the teleprompter or something she was winging or whatever. But yeah, she feels like she has to set up the segment by saying, you all are independent, the coveted independent swing voters who everybody's chasing after, and I want to know, you all ended up voting for Trump and now you say you regret it, and tell me why that is. And then in the course of their explaining that they had it with Trump and that they weren't going to vote for him again and that they were going to vote in the upcoming, and none of them actually say they're definitely voting in the upcoming midterm elections, I guess, but they do say, they're not going to be fooled by him again. And, they went on to talk about how they're disappointed in what he did and the various things that specifically disappoint them. Here it is. Greg had tweeted this one around. Regretful Trump voters explain why they've turned on him. And it's the CNN segment. This is something he tweeted yesterday. A little bit after the show, 11:27 a.m. And, it's a very interesting segment, and they say all the things that you would expect them to say as regretful Trump voters. But it's very weird that they're set up as independent voters, and then when they are trying to justify, I guess, by way of of purifying their having turned against Trump, it's more impactful, they think, to talk about how they dislike Trump and they won't be voting for Republicans in the upcoming election because they're angry with Trump, and yet they are lifelong Republicans. And maybe they're not. And maybe the CNN host had it right and the voters were the ones lying there and just trying to embellish their story by saying I'm a lifelong Republican, but I'm still not voting for Trump or any Republican candidates. So there, versus, well, I swing back and forth all the time because I'm one of those coveted independent swing voters. And last time I swung towards Republicans, and this time I'm swinging away, which was just as interesting from a, polling perspective or the perspective of delivering on the promise of the segment. But then they realized halfway through the segment, this segment is not nearly as sexy as it would be if I were a lifelong Republican. And so now I have my doubts. And how many times have we seen panels assembled where you're an independent voter, and then it turns out that the person, 2 or 3 of the people are not only lifelong Republicans, but are actively in the local Republican Party or are chairs of their local county Republican parties. Can we be done with the panel thing already? I mean, has that ever worked out? Have the people ever turned out to be who they were claiming to be? They're all forging photos of their passports like Simona Mangiante. I can't believe we spent that much time on her, but take it this way. It's indicative of everything that's going on everywhere. Inside Trump circles, outside Trump circles. You can't believe anything anymore, I guess, is the upshot of it. And you should not believe this. All of this has been faked and lied. All right. I got to speak to some other fakes and lies here before we get out of here. And then, we'll see where we get to after that. All right. How about this one? How about something from over at Daily Kos? I noticed Frank Vian Walton, now going by his full name, had a diary up the other day, which very extensive. I'm going to have to skip the clips that he links and lifts from the source materials and just give you his descriptions and conclusions in order to get through this whole thing. But here's the headline of the piece he put together. Democrats didn't leak Dr. Ford's letter. Christine Blasey Ford. It was most likely the White House. Have we all reached this conclusion? I haven't given enough thought to who leaked the letter. It didn't really interest me that much at the time, but now we got this. The White House and Trump are clearly outraged, he wrote when? Back on October 14th, way back on Sunday. White House and Trump are clearly outraged over what poor Brett Kavanaugh had to endure before becoming the newest right-leaning corporate justice on the Supreme Court. They are livid and verklempt. I don't know if that's the correct application of verklempt, but okay. Over his horrible treatment after Democrats viciously and strategically released horrible lies and deceptions about him in a failed attempt to derail his confirmation. Those, of course, in scare quotes there. This is exactly how they first responded to the news about the Blasey Ford accusations way back on September 13th. And here he quotes from a CNBC article in which White House spokesperson Carrie Kupek, how does this person pronounce her last name? I've missed out on that. Said that the FBI has thoroughly and repeatedly vetted Judge Kavanaugh dating back to 1993 for some of the most highly sensitive roles, blah, 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 11th hour thing. You remember all of that. So clearly, it says Schumer and Feinstein were plotting secretly to strategically use Dr. Ford as a pawn in an attempt to destroy Kavanaugh. That's, of course, the White House line. They had the letter. They kept it hidden, and then in the 11th hour had decided to ambush Kavanaugh in order to embarrass him using this poor woman in their desperate and evil plan. That's how the White House would describe what was going on. The problem with this argument is that nearly all the press reports prior to and including the New Yorker report that first detailed the contents of Dr. Ford's letter indicate that Senator Feinstein's office didn't share anything about the letter with anyone except the FBI on September 12th. In fact, the most likely source for the ultimate release of Dr. Ford's name and identity was the White House itself. All their outrage is false. And, well, that has to be pretty true. The upshot of all this, in case we don't get through all of this, is that the White House, well, how should we even put this? first part of it is the White House keeps blaming Dianne Feinstein and saying she leaked the letter, and that was the cause of his then leading a lock her up chant about Dianne Feinstein, although it is unclear what they could lock her up over. It's the release of a letter of a private individual. There's nothing to lock up about it. It's not classified in any way, shape, or form. But they were going to lock up Dianne Feinstein because leak, essentially. She leaked the letter, and in Trump world, every leak is a leak of government secrets if somebody else did it. If he does it, it's not, and he doesn't have to face a high tribunal, etc. So they've been saying she was the leaker. And Frank here reminds us all that, well, at the same time, there was all this reporting about tensions inside the Democratic caucus and among the Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee, because Dianne Feinstein was not sharing the information. So she was both the leaker and the one who wouldn't share all the information at the same time. This, of course, makes no sense, but, is this orange buffoon going to give a damn about that? No, of course not. He then moves on to, during the ceremonial second victory lap swearing in of Kavanaugh this week, that was last week, Trump took the amazing step of apologizing on behalf of America to the nominee and his family, something he still hasn't done for anything really, but including, as he says here, the Central Park Five, or for practically anyone or anything else. And yet, again, viciously attacked Democrats who had stood against Kavanaugh's confirmation and supported Dr. Ford. And he quotes from that apology, and you all know what he said there. And then, of course, the reference to innocent until proven guilty. And he reminds us innocent until proven guilty is the standard for criminal trials. Kavanaugh wasn't on trial. He was being vetted for one of the most exclusive jobs on the planet. And frankly, there really wasn't enough evidence to meet legal standards, since the FBI didn't actually bother to interview all 40 witnesses against him. But they didn't do that, and they only interviewed 9 witnesses after Don McGahn told Trump to limit the FBI investigation or else it might prove disastrous. And again, a quote there from the reporting on that exchange, right? It's McGahn says, no, a wide-ranging inquiry like some Democrats were demanding and Mr. Trump was suggesting would be potentially disastrous, right? Consequently, the FBI didn't investigate everything, only just enough to appease Jeff Flake and then get Kavanaugh through anyway, while proclaiming there was no corroboration of her claims, although there was also no corroboration of Kavanaugh's claims either. Good point. During a convention of police chiefs this week in Orlando, Trump again strongly defended Kavanaugh for toughing it out and claimed that those who criticized him were people who were evil. I think those evil people are in a completely different place than Trump claims. Trump has been so outraged by the behavior of Dianne Feinstein, supposedly plotting against Kavanaugh, that he pulled out the golden oldie "lock her up" chant during a recent rally, but not for Hillary, this time for Feinstein. Following this up, Senator Tom Cotton has threatened to have Feinstein investigated for violating Senate rules and sharing confidential Senate materials with the press. But of course, then again, those were not confidential Senate materials. It was Dianne Feinstein being asked at the time by Dr. Ford, please don't release this letter. And so she didn't. Cotton also said he would refer Dr. Ford's lawyers to the District of Columbia Bar for failing to inform their client of the Judiciary Committee's offer to meet privately with her in California instead of under the bright lights of national TV during a public hearing. Problem with that, of course, didn't happen. On CNN, Ford's attorneys said they shared all their correspondence with the committee with their client and that there was no offer for the full committee to travel to California. The offer was for committee staffers to make the trip, not the actual senators. And guess what? They weren't interested. Similarly, Cotton is totally wrong about what happened with Feinstein's office and the Ford letter. The first thing that rational people have to remember, he says, is that the first report about Dr. Ford's letter to Senator Feinstein was a complaint by the other Democrats who had heard about the existence of the letter, saying that Feinstein had so far refused to show it to them. That referring to the Intercept's reporting on the subject. Remember that when we shared it? Ryan Grimm has noted that Feinstein and her office weren't the source for the letter or the rumors about the letter. It's eminently clear from this original report in The Intercept, other than Feinstein, none of the Democrats on the Judiciary Committee had a copy of the letter. They weren't even able to describe it consistently. As The Intercept describes, the letter had been sent to Washington through Ford's local representative, Anna Eshoo. Eshoo passed it on to Feinstein. Instead of Feinstein leaking the letter's existence, it's very likely that members of Eshoo's staff were aware of the letter, but not the contents. And to be fair, they may have unwittingly, he says, gossiped about it with other Democratic staffers who ultimately passed on these rumors to The Intercept without even knowing what they were talking about. It's an idea. They couldn't possibly have known that Feinstein had personally pledged not to release the letter and to keep it confidential, as she ultimately testified. The same day that the Intercept report was released, September 12th, Feinstein instead shared the letter with the FBI, as noted above by Grimm, but she still didn't let other Democrats see it, as reported by CNBC on September 13th. That same day, the Washington Post reported that Feinstein had sat down with her fellow Democrats to explain why she had kept the letter confidential, but as noted above, she didn't give them copies, only a general description of its contents. The Washington Post report also confirms that Feinstein gave the letter to the FBI, but notes that rather than launching a new investigation, they instead placed it in Kavanaugh's background file, which meant that it was immediately available to the White House. It also notes that Anna Eshoo's office also refused to share any information about the letter about Ford. Again, the same day, the White House immediately begins roaring that this was a Democrat plot, accusing Feinstein of being, quote, in cahoots with Senator Schumer. Why would they not be in cahoots? They're working for the same team. Let me pause, he says, right here and recap. One day after the Intercept's initial report, Feinstein has a copy of the letter, the FBI has a copy of the letter, and the White House has a copy of the letter. But no other Democrats have a copy. Not even Schumer, because Feinstein, even though she may be willing to talk to them about it, has made a promise to Dr. Ford. One more day later, September 14th, Ronan Farrow and Jane Meyer at the New Yorker fully described just about the entire contents of the letter. They clearly had a copy. This is further shown because not only did they talk directly to Kavanaugh for a comment, they also reached out to Mark Judge and Ford for comments as well. Again, in this story, Farrow and Meyer point out that Feinstein didn't provide any information to the letter about the letter to the press or even to other Democrats. In fact, Feinstein's office actually tried to get them to drop the matter and waved them off the issue, and this is questionable, but by saying that it was too distant in the past to merit public discussion and that she'd already taken care of it by referring the matter to the FBI. Despite all the Republican talking points on this, all the reporting says Feinstein did everything she possibly could, at least until the Intercept report came out, to keep Ford's identity and the details of her letter confidential. It was actually the fact that she did that so completely that irritated other Democrats. It was their grumbling that eventually reached the Intercept and started the snowball tumbling down the hill. This is not a plot. It's not a plan. It's a cluster F. And you know what the F word is for that one. On September 16th, Ford comes forward, revealing her name and the details of her story for the first time publicly to the Washington Post. The story notes that the FBI had sent a redacted copy of the letter to the White House, which in turn had shared a copy in the next few days with the full Judiciary Committee. Well, somebody obviously talked here, but it wasn't Feinstein and it wasn't the Democrats. They couldn't talk and she had promised not to. So what happened here? There's every indication that somebody who talked wasn't Feinstein or her office. It wasn't any other Democrat because they didn't have anything to talk about. The only people who actually had copies of the letter were the FBI and the Trump White House. Now, Frank continues, I'm willing to throw doubt on the FBI being the source of the leak because it's fairly unlikely. Not that long before, Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe had just been fired just days before becoming fully vested for retirement, because he didn't immediately admit to the Inspector General's office that he had authorized a leak to the Wall Street Journal about the FBI investigations into the Clinton Foundation. McCabe, you all know his story. Also, if the FBI had done it, he says, Trump and the Republicans would be screaming bloody murder over it. That leaves one single solitary source for the leak, the other people who had it, the White House. As soon as the FBI added the letter to Kavanaugh's background file, it was available for the White House and White House counsel Don McGahn to review and share with whomever he liked. I submit, Frank writes, that he deliberately shared it with the press for various reasons. First, it was reported back in August by Politico that Trump would welcome being impeached because he feels that it would backfire on Democrats because he'd never be convicted and removed by the Senate. Interesting. Here he quotes a Politico piece on the subject, and he says, technically the piece makes a strong point that the Ed Whalen doppelganger theory, which suggests that Dr. Ford was absolutely telling the truth, but at the same time so was Kavanaugh, because she didn't know what she was talking about when she said she was 100% certain that her attacker was Brett Kavanaugh. Well, that theory was so easily adopted is an uncomfortable straddling position by Susan Collins and Joe Manchin, shows us that similarly ridiculous, politically convenient positions are likely to be assumed if the Senate were to take up the conviction and removal of Trump. The probability that both were telling the truth and Kavanaugh simply didn't remember because of his drinking was ignored because all the witnesses who supported that argument, such as his former Yale roommate, Jamie Roche, were ignored by the FBI on the orders of Don McGahn. To the Republicans, it doesn't matter that Papadopoulos, we're back on him, was personally authorized by Trump to illegally interact with and reach out to the Russians, and was the first to discover that they had obtained a trove of illegally hacked emails connected to Hillary Clinton, and that he did not bother to inform the FBI that he'd been made aware of a felony, but he was directed by Jeff Sessions to find out everything he could about them. It doesn't matter that Paul Manafort had a Russian military intelligence officer on his payroll and was repeatedly making offers to provide a Russian gangster with inside information on the Trump campaign. It doesn't matter that Don Jr. had his meeting in Trump Tower. All of these things, of course, make no difference to Republicans. He lists them. They go on and on. None of that matters to them any more than Kavanaugh's obvious perjury matters. The Senate is not going to remove Trump, even if Mueller gets Putin to confess on the steps of the Capitol. Secondly, the White House had already released Dr. Ford's identity to multiple GOP operatives, including Ed Whalen, as soon as they were informed of her name by the Washington Post on September 16th, just before she came forward on her own. If they were willing to do that, why wouldn't they release the letter itself as soon as they received it from the FBI on September 12th or 13th? Similar to the impeachment backfire argument, Trump has claimed that poor treatment of Kavanaugh would be a boost for Republicans in the midterms. Well, the Trump White House, frankly, was the only suspect with the opportunity, means, and motive to release that letter to the press before she came forward herself. Now they're using that revelation to do exactly what Trump said he would do: attack Democrats and gin up massive outrage among his base for the poor treatment of Justice Kavanaugh, and even claim that Democrats used Ford as a pawn when in fact it was their own release of her letter that ultimately forced her to come forward. Unfortunately, the record shows that this outrage is false. It's a scam, just like the Trump family scammed the IRS for decades by avoiding paying all those taxes. He will stoop to anything and stop at literally nothing. I submit, he sums up, that the facts and evidence show that Senator Feinstein and her office have been proven innocent by Ryan Grimm and Ford's own attorneys. Trump is the guilty one here, and he's trying to exploit his base's blind rage to keep the Democrats from taking the Senate or the House and protect himself from any real investigation. The first thing that should be investigated is who in the White House outed Dr. Ford's letter to the press. And that's a damn good question. An update from yesterday, Sunday. Senator Tom Cotton, now also without a shred of proof, claims Schumer, leaked the letter to the press. However, Schumer, as we know, didn't even have a copy of the letter at the time, so that pretty much rules him out as well. Anyway, good sleuthing there, I thought. Well worth considering, and well worth baking into the background, what should we call it? The confection that is Trump as liar. There was plenty more about the big lies that he's continually weaving, and we could spend any day on that, I guess. Now, with just a few minutes remaining, let's shift gears entirely. Here's something that I thought was very interesting and well worth sharing, and I might only be able to share the very beginning of it with you. But there's every once in a while, totally unrelated anecdote that I think helps us think of the world in a clearer way, and very often it is historians who bring us this news. Have you all seen this one? This is a very popular Twitter thread from Louis Hyman, who is a historian of capitalism and other fun stuff, as he says. And this is a very interesting thread. In the wake of the story of the Sears bankruptcy, about which you should read probably from David Dayen as well, read this. In my history of consumption class, this is all very interesting, and you'll get the gist very quickly. I won't even have to get through the whole thread. It will hook you, and you'll be interested in reading it. I'll provide you a link. In my history of consumption class, I teach about Sears, but what most people don't know is just how radical the catalog was in the era of Jim Crow. Everyone knows about Sears and the Sears catalog and how you could buy anything from Sears. And everybody understands the convenience of it. But yeah, check this out. Every time a black Southerner went to the local store, if he wanted to buy something, they were confronted with forced deference to white customers who would be served first. And of course, the store would be filled with racist caricatures of black people in an effort to sell to white people, like the original, very racist Aunt Jemima, trademarked, rendering there. The stores were not self-service, so the black customers would have to wait, and they would have to ask the proprietor to give them the goods, often on credit, because of course they were poor sharecroppers. The landlord often owned the store in addition to all of that, and so in every way, shopping reinforced hierarchy until Sears. The catalog undid the power of the storekeeper, and by extension, the landlord. Black families could now buy without asking permission, without waiting, without being watched, with national and therefore cheap prices as well. Southern storekeepers actually fought back. They organized catalog bonfires in the street. I didn't even realize that was the case. These general stores often doubled as post offices. The owners would refuse to sell stamps to black people or money orders in order to use the catalog's services in the first place. This is actually quite an amazing revelation to those of us who weren't aware of this part of the history. Happened enough, in fact, that Sears instructed customers to evade the postmaster and speak directly to the mail carrier. Just give the letter and the money to the mail carrier, and he will get the money order at the post office and mail it in the letter for you. That must have been tough to believe. In an attempt to undermine Sears, rumors spread that Sears was black to get white customers to stop buying from him. Sold by mail, quote, these fellows could not afford to show their faces as real retailers, unquote. That's the kind of thing that they had to say about Sears. Sears, in turn, of course, published photos to prove that he was white. So he got caught up right in the Elizabeth Warren hype there, too. So racist a-holes manipulated him and forced him to prove he was white, of all things. Anyway, these rumors didn't affect sales, but show how race and commerce connected in the countryside and how dangerous it was to the local order, to white supremacy, to have national markets. Very interesting. So as we think about Sears today, let's think about how retail is not just about buying things, but part of a larger system of power. Every act of power contains the opportunity and the means for resistance. And then he marvels at the response that he gets, and he should. And you should all read this thing and read it more in depth. It really is quite amazing. And speaking of quite amazing, there's more to come here on Netroots Radio immediately following our program. Justice Putnam's West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is next. Let's take a look at what he's got on tap for you. The GOP has their work cut out for them to suppress the vote of the all-important independent Trump voters, remember them, who are now switching to Democratic candidates in the midterms, like CNN was telling us. On the rest of the menu, police in Georgia illegally removed roughly 40 black senior citizens off a bus organized to take them to their precinct on the first day of early voting. Love to find out more about that. The Trump administration is spending millions of dollars on private around-the-clock security for at least 8 Confederate cemeteries since the march in Charlottesville last year, and much more.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waltman.
An update on the insanity in West Virginia. Plunged headlong into a constitutional crisis as the Republican impeachment of their Chief Justice is ruled illegal. I would really love to study that. And then some international news as well. Another crack shows up in Angela Merkel's coalition government as the far-right Alternative for Germany party wins big. Oh no.